Greetings, innovators and leaders. This is AI for the C-Suite, your compass for navigating the exponential age. I'm Chad Harvey, and we're here to bring you cutting-edge insights on AI tailored specifically for middle-market organizations. Buckle up as we embark on a journey through the transformative world of artificial intelligence. My guest today is Nell Tice, owner of enTICEing Media, a full-service multimedia production company. In addition to her day job, Nell is also an author, speaker, podcast host, and radio show host. By the end of this, she may be interviewing me. In 2021, Nell resigned from her COO position at a coffee and tea wholesale business to focus on enTICEing Media full-time. As Nell continued to evolve within her business, so did the rise of AI. She began exploring the opportunities AI provided, especially in different areas of media. Nell started to embrace what AI can offer to busy entrepreneurs and ultimately ended up with her philosophy, never let AI be your final product. Through this process, Nell began speaking at events about ethics in AI and tools to streamline your business. Nell, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Thank you so much, Chad. I am so happy to be here.
So am I. I am looking forward to some great conversation today. So, to kick us off, why don't you talk a little bit about your journey and initial forays into the world of AI, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. I think I can speak on behalf of many, many people when they say that their first foray into AI was through ChatGPT. And it was kind of the first inclination that I had that there was something to this. And I actually had seen a colleague, I should say, using a lot of language in some social media posts that didn't quite seem like himself. And at the time, I was familiar with ChatGPT, but I wasn't familiar with what it could do. And I thought, man, what is happening here? There's a disconnect. And so I started to look into it a little bit more, and I started to see more posts like it. And I thought, aha, that's when the proverbial light bulb went off. And I discovered that these people started writing their posts through ChatGPT. And in that process of discovering it and playing around with it a little bit, I also found out that my father, who's been in computer engineering, software engineering for decades, was working on some storage and equipment for NVIDIA, which is one of the largest organizations in the AI sector at the moment, I'll say. And as a software engineer, I thought, how could he be okay with this? So I started questioning, and he's working on something that basically could replace him at some point. It was just the craziest thing to me. So I started researching and questioning everything about AI. And through that process, I thought, this is something that if we're not embracing it now, it will be embraced later, will be left behind. So I had started then becoming more interested in how I could ethically make it work in my business, because we all, as busy entrepreneurs, we all need productivity and more time and all of the things to make things work. And AI absolutely has that ability to do that if we use it properly.
Mm-hmm. You touched on a number of things there that are very interesting to me, and I want to circle back to the productivity piece in a moment. The authenticity component, though, that you talked about with the colleague that you saw writing those posts, that's something that began to surface very quickly and very early on as folks began adopting and using these tools. And I spent a lot of time with companies that were calling me early on, working on their voice. I'm not a media consultant. I'm not a branding or marketing expert, yet there was a disconnect, I think, for a lot of folks that hadn't thought about what is the voice of our company or what is even my own personal writing voice. And I'd be interested to know, because I know you're very interested in AI ethics, what your opinion is on that and how you counsel and coach both individuals and organizations about their voice to make sure that it's not the standard, I'm going to say, hyperbolic dreck that comes out a lot of the AI engines, because they tend to use very excitable words and very excitable phrases. Everything's groundbreaking and it's, this, that, and the other thing. So
transformative.
Yeah, exactly. So give us your hot take on everything I just threw out there, if you can find a question buried in there somewhere.
Sure, absolutely. So, coming from the world of YouTube, I was very accustomed to using those words like transformative and groundbreaking and mind blowing and things like that because, clickbait is very real. And in order to gain traction and have videos on YouTube work for you, you need to utilize some of those keywords to be seen in front of your target audience. So I get that. I understand it. And I even at one point found myself using, just because my vocabulary it evolved over the years, I would find myself speaking in a manner that sounded almost like AI. And I thought, oh, I better rein this in a little bit. But, in regards to when I would see people use these words and their voices, you know, brand authenticity and your voice is something so incredibly specific and niched, and it's so very obvious when it's not you. Now, we have VAs, we have executive assistants, we have all kinds of other outlets to have this content be created and put out there that aren't us, but they are specifically trained to speak in our brand voices. So now, and of course, as the evolution of Chat GPT had happened, there's the option to train it to speak in your voice, which is actually quite scary if you think about it. But it's the like, know, and trust factor, right? We always go back to that. And as a business owner, I think it's really, really important to sound like you. I wholeheartedly believe in using Chat GPT to create some content for you. But like I always say, never let it be your final product. I think making edits to it and changing out some of the emojis or even eliminating them, using words that you use to create that authenticity is only going to help create that connection with you and your potential clients.
Yep. I think that's spot on. One of the things that I found early on was beneficial is I began training a thread in ChatGPT on prior writings of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually took it a step further because I was very interested in the analysis, and I asked it to create a writing profile based on my past body of work.
Sure.
That was actually very enlightening. It was more insightful in many ways than an analysis I would have had by, say, even an English writing professor, because it got very granular in terms of, well, this is your tone. These are the types of things you use. It even called out my tendency to use a lot of pop culture references from the 80s and mid-90s, right? So it got my number pretty quickly. And I found that was very interesting. But again, embracing the uniqueness of who you are or who your organization is and getting crystal clear on what that means, I think is pretty important. So.
Absolutely. And I think that's absolutely should be a priority of any brand and business. And I think that's really interesting what you mentioned about the insightfulness. And if there is certainly one thing that we can take away from the capabilities of AI is that we should be honestly focusing on it as somewhat of a learning tool, learning about ourselves. And, is this really how I speak? And it really is, it can be an amazing learning tool, honestly. And also paying attention to the idiosyncrasies that it has. It's not perfect. It may get to a point where it will be perfect. I don't think that's in our lifetime, but using it as a tool for looking inward is certainly something that we can do with AI.
Indeed. I think it also has the potential to help us look outward in a different manner as well. I often say to folks when they raise the concerns about, robots and AI taking our jobs and becoming who we are in the future, I say, look, a lot of the work, a lot of what we have built value around in the past is going to look very different going forward. But these tools, in my opinion, allow us to be more human, not less human, because it's interactions like what you and I are having right now that can't be commoditized, that can't be easily replicated. I think that's what's really important there.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of question with the ethics as far as artwork goes. And, Midjourney is a huge platform, and it's honestly a really scarily good one. But where are these images being created from? Where are we drawing from in regards to this creativity? And I think once we get farther into that creative space, that's where a lot of the question comes in. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we can use AI to look outward into that. Sure.
Yeah. Let's circle back to a point you identified in terms of productivity and automations.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've seen when I work with companies, and I get called in a lot on these types of topics, is that kind of the bottom two rungs, if you will, and that this is not meaning that it's throwaway at all. It's just kind of the approachability factor, right?
Sure.
One is driving efficiencies and creating a product that is going to be just as good as what you have done in the past, only doing it in a superior fashion, either in terms of time or in terms of resources, things like that.
Mhm.
The other approachability factor I find is companies are looking to save money, right? So we do want to
Yes.
save costs off this. Very different than the efficiency paradigm.
Sure.
I'm also always very reluctant to say, well, just do this, do this, do this, do this, and you're going to be good to go, because every organization has different needs. So
Mhm.
what are some of the needs that you found that you need or that you found AI could best address? And what are some of the tools that you use to do that in terms of efficiency, automation, maybe even cost cutting? I don't know.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think we can all relate when we see the lists of subscriptions pile up, right? I mean, it's a mile long and we're always looking to cut that list down a little bit. Now, if you can utilize, so I'll give you an example. I use a lot of AI behind the scenes to help the workflow because, like I say, never let it be your final product. I'm also a big fan of not letting it be too front facing. So I
Okay.
don't want a client to ever feel like I am responding with AI
Mm.
or I have generated a conversation with AI. That's never my intention. But a lot of productivity efficiencies happen behind the scenes in my CRM, for example.
Mhm.
I love consolidating and using as many tools as I possibly can in one space.
Right.
Last year, now time management, I actually just recorded a podcast this morning on
Mm.
tips for time management and certain tips and apps and software that I will use to help with that. And it's one of my favorite subjects because time is the one commodity we cannot get more of. And so it's our most valuable asset. So
Mhm.
anything that we can do to help save us time is automatically more efficient in my eyes. So my CRM will allow me to do project management and automations and all of those things, which is fantastic. Now, last year, I moved to an AI calendar called Motion. And what's really cool about it is you can have your calendar and your scheduling all in one space, which I found the app itself, that's a fantastic idea. I
Mhm.
found the app itself to be really clunky. So I actually
Mm.
ended up going back to Google Calendar and Calendly.
Mhm.
Everybody uses those
Yep.
those tools, right? So I went back to doing that, but I set it up differently, color coding, and Google Calendar has evolved as well. There are
Mm.
some AI features in it, and it will move your tasks around into fitting into some free space that you have, which is really helpful because I don't have to think
Mhm.
about that. So if I can find something that allows me to not have to think, even better. So those are just some simple things. And tool Zapier, if anybody's
Yep.
familiar with that, will connect a lot of platforms together. So I will connect Calendly with Google Calendar. And
Mhm.
so when something is scheduled, it automatically goes to my calendar. Then I will have, let's just take a process, for instance, the process for my podcast. I have a meet and greet. So someone will fill out a form, then there's a message sent to me. I will go over it. We'll have the meet and greet. If we decide they're a right fit, I have funnels and AI set up messages that will go out to them to say, here, we need to schedule, we need a headshot, we need a bio, and everything is set up for us, and sends the link to record. After that happens, I do have some AI tools that I use to help me with getting the episodes uploaded, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's just creating reels. I use video AI that will take one long form piece of video and cut it down and even give you scores on
Yeah.
how well your content is going to do
Hmm.
based on keywords. So it's really helpful to not have to think about those things. We can
Mm-hmm.
put all of the time and energy into keyword research. You can go to Google Keyword Planner if you really want to answer or answer the public, it is, I
Yeah.
think. Those types of platforms, which help for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
if you can set up automations to do that for you, I mean, that's hours worth of productivity right there that I could be spending somewhere else in my business that's truly actually making money.
Mm-hmm. What has been the best path that you've found to identify where you want to go with these tools? So, for example, here, one of the counsels that I often provide to organizations is we need to be really focused on the results that you're already driving, and then we'll back into what tool or what process within a tool is going to fit best, because there are no killer AI large language model apps per se yet, right? There's a
No.
lot of different GPTs that are built. There's a lot of
Mhm.
canned prompts. There's a lot of things out there, but there's no killer app like the example I always give is Microsoft Excel and the spreadsheet app that came out in the 80s, right? There's no equivalent of that yet in AI land. So what's your process for determining how you're going to figure out where to utilize a tool?
Well, I think like any other process in your business, where would you look to hire? And what can someone else do that where your time is better spent somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it along those lines of, where can I get some help with this? That's when I'll start the process for, okay, what AI tool can I use that will help me with this? I love the human aspect of connecting with someone on a daily basis to get tasks completed. And I, while that's always going to be possible, because I don't believe that AI is going to take over the world and all jobs, it's there are certain times and spaces, mainly a cost, taking a look at how much is it going to cost if I subscribe to this?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of hiring someone on Upwork or Fiverr or someone in your community, which like I said, there are times and places for that. So, where do I feel like I can use assistance?
Mm-hmm.
And if I can find it for free, even better. If I can find it for a minimal amount a month and test out its productivity, and I love a free trial. I love testing out things for a month. If I feel like I'm getting the worth from that particular platform, I will keep it. And if I really start to feel like I need a human in this situation, I
Mm-hmm.
will get rid of it and I will go down that route.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because when we go to places like Fiverr or Upwork or any platform like that, or even any other human, we don't know what their productivity is going to be like until we hire them. It's
Right.
the same concept for AI.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know until we know.
Uh-huh. I love that you identify that, because one of the common themes that emerges with especially leaders of mid-sized and larger organizations when
Mhm.
we first start talking about AI is they'll say, well, I asked it to do this and it didn't do it. So AI is a big fail. And I draw a parallel between that example, which it's not, by the way. You just didn't use the tool properly. Um,
Exactly.
and I draw a parallel between that and your previous example about assessing the work done by people. We wouldn't give
Mhm.
up on a human after one attempt, right?
Right.
Okay, Bob didn't write this report correctly. He's worthless. He's gone. Bring in Bob number
Exactly.
two, right? So I think that there's an interesting push and pull there, and we've got to adapt and change the way we're viewing AI systems and the way
Mhm.
we work with them. Just, I'm not saying treat them like a human, but I think there are some lessons to be drawn there from how we interact with other real world human beings.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. We don't need to say please and thank you. to the AI.
Although I still do. I want them to remember that this nice guy over here was treating them well.
I completely appreciate that. And I think at first I did too, because I thought, there's some sort of technological karma that's going to come back here and we'll see. But yeah, we're not at that point yet until the robots really start walking the
That's
streets.
right.
But
What's that Simpsons meme? I, for one, welcome my new robot overlords.
exactly. Yeah, it's really a mindset of, I wouldn't want to be treated like I wasn't worth it in,
Right.
a 12-hour period. How do we know? And how can you accurately tell until you've given it some time and you adapt to that human, just like a human, you adapt to that
Right.
human too. You learn how to work together, you learn that relationship. AI is not any different. We're still building a relationship. It just happens to be different complexities of how we're all created.
Exactly. And that reminds me of another question I often get, which is which AI tool is best? And I quickly redline that and I say, no, that's the wrong question. The right question is what result do I want to achieve, or which AI tool is best for this task, not best
Exactly.
overall, right? They're all
No.
so very different. And to your
Yep.
point about treating people and tools differently, you need to know which tool to pull the lever on and how to work with that tool. So,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. There is no blanket statement for anything, and
no,
nothing is black and white. And this, especially AI, is a very gray area. There's different levels of service. There's tiers of AI softwares and programs, of course, just like there is anything else.
yeah,
And absolutely, what results are you looking for?
right.
Then we can start narrowing down what you need. And there can absolutely be a best AI for what you're looking for. And there are still very new programs in development and beta that are not, I mean, there's so many different levels out there available to us. But let's not forget, there's so many different levels of human beings out there available to us as well. So it really is a learning process all the way around.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm not going to end the podcast, but that would have almost been a mic drop moment right there. There are so many different levels of human beings available. Full stop. And we're done.
I mean, it's so, so true. I
Yeah.
think that we're just so jaded and
Yes.
clouded because this is a time where, we've done everything so human for so long,
Yeah.
and this is now infiltrating, and it's kind of like that freak out chaos moment. Oh, what do we do with this?
Right.
Well, I mean, what we do with this is we take it with a grain of salt, we let it evolve, we let it improve and make it work for us.
hmm it's absolutely fascinating to me to see this technology begin to percolate and penetrate into our society, into our culture, and how we're interacting with it. And I look back on different technologies that have come along in the past, and this is wholly unique, by the way. It's a general purpose technology. I think it is on par with the invention of electricity, or at least
Hmm.
the ability of humans to harness electricity. Um, but I see so many different mentalities out there, and we're still coming to grips with what this is going to mean for us as a society. And I think that's an excellent segue into one of your passions, which is the ethics around AI.
Sure.
And I'd love to know, because when this subject comes up, and it does come up all the time, it comes up in a
Hmm.
whole wide variety of formats.
Hmm.
How is it typically coming up, and what are the questions that you're typically being asked around AI ethics?
Absolutely. So I spend a lot of time in the creative space, specifically, of course, in the video side, but also on the musical side.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of question about independent creators and artists and musicians and AI. And I think a lot of artists are afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And, when there were a lot of questions and all of this was coming to light, I absolutely agree that I think there was a small snippet of time where I thought, I can be replaced. And it took a lot of mindset work to get to a point where I realized I'm not going to be replaced because I'm me.
Right.
No one can replace me. And AI is very generalized, and there are a lot of artists out there now I'm finding out that are not scared of it and actually use it in their process as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really comes down to, where are you on the capabilities of AI and how threatened do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
And the artist community is a huge place, because of, like I'd mentioned before, the artwork. Where is AI pulling from? There's no real accountability being held for work that's being stolen from somewhere off the internet,
Right.
and these voices that are being trained to be us that we didn't give consent to.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of question about that and the regulatory ends of it. But I really think in the artist community, especially because we have radio shows, we're always playing music. I have this notion of wanting to make sure that what we're playing is authentic. And we have live radio shows, which to me is the most authentic it can get, because there's no editing.
Right.
There's what you see is what you hear is what you get, I should
Right.
say. But I spend a lot of time in that community, and I think that what we really need to work on is not fighting AI in that community. It's making people feel more safe with it.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, if it gets in the wrong hands, just like anything else, there's danger.
Right.
But the more that we can talk about the ethical side of it and talk about maybe where things are coming from and hold platforms and people accountable for where they're garnering some of this work, then the better off we can be.
Mm-hmm. And I think this will become much clearer over the next couple of years. Full disclosure, we're filming this prior to the passage of California Senate Bill 1047, which a lot of people are watching. We're watching it as well on our platform. California almost always has first mover advantage in the tech space, and a lot of other states and the federal entities look to them for guidance. But whether it's California SB 1047 or whether it's another piece of legislation or regulatory framework, I think those will, whether you like regulation or not, and whether you embrace the idea of regulation in different industries or not, that will bring some clarity to this space in the coming months and years. But right now, we're all still kind of swinging around in the dark, playing with this new toy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, like anything else, AI has actually been in use. The term
Right.
artificial intelligence has been in use since, I believe it was the 1950s,
Right.
and was originally concepted out of security and defense for our country. And so it's now, just because so much evolution has happened so quickly, it's coming to light. And we're still at a space where it's so fresh and so new, and to maybe some of those in this country, it's not.
Yeah.
And but for those of us, it is so fresh and new too. The questioning, the talking about it, and where we can go from here, I think really can help things. And I can't say personally whether I'm on board for whatever type of regulation there is for it, because
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
We're still figuring this out. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it, is we're all testing it out, playing around with it, making it work for us without the regulation yet, just to see what it's capable of. Because like I said before, you don't know what you don't know. And there will be things that come to light where we say, okay, this has to be regulated. And then we can point that out, we can nip it in the bud, and hopefully have a really safe future with AI.
Yep. No, well said. And I think the complicating factor in all of this is the evolution of the technology and the rapidity and the pace of evolution. We are just now starting to wrap our arms around what it means to have conversational AI. And before too long, we are going to have, if you follow OpenAI's 5-stage classification system, we're going to have research-based AI. Then we're going to have agents that operate autonomously. And I think each one of these different types of developments and levels, if you will, is going to bring a whole other host of new, fresh ethical considerations and complications. So we're in for an interesting ride this decade, I think.
Oh, yeah, we absolutely are. And, what happens when these developments go wrong?
Right.
And there was recently some legislation, I believe, involving a chat bot on a website where someone was asking questions, the AI was responding to it and gave them an incorrect answer, which
Yeah.
eventually erupted in lawsuits. And that's something that we'll have to figure out too, and we'll navigate together.
Mm.
But I mean, this is really, I think what I'm trying to say is to, instead of not taking it so seriously, I think we need to take a step back and realize that we still have all of the power.
Yes.
And, the feeling threatened, I understand that, especially in certain communities. But really just taking a step back, studying it, and realizing, yeah, that we still have all the power and we still can make all the moves and we can make it work for us is what's really, really important. And I think when we become really afraid of it, we give more of it. We give
Mhm.
it more power up from us. And I think we just need to still keep that mindset that we are the authority
I
here,
agree.
not AI.
No, well said. And as the authorities, right? So human beings with control over this technology, with the organizations and the leaders that you're working with, what type of counsel and advice are you providing to them to help prepare their businesses and their organizations, not just for what's now, but also what's next? And I don't expect you to lay out a 24-point future-proofing plan here. Be great if you did. I'll just turn the next 5 minutes over to you. But what type of advice are you handing out to folks when this question arises?
Hmm, that's a good question. I It's very situational based because right now I think that the pendulum can swing so far.
Yeah.
And when we start to get a little clearer on some regulations and some ethics questions, I think that's when we can start to lay out some real good thought processes and blanket statements behind the advice because it really is still all about developing that relationship and that connection and finding out what our needs are as business owners
Mhm.
and collaborators. And I work with a lot of I've worked with a lot of people in some really very different industries. I've worked with people in financial industries, the home services and real estate industries, but I've also worked with some real amazing artists and creators, and it's also very different. And I will say that typically your business owner, small, mid-sized business owners are very open-minded
Mhm.
to the possibilities of what AI has to offer. And it's pretty refreshing, considering, I think that entrepreneurs are definitely on a wavelength together.
Yes.
So it doesn't surprise me when, I'm offering advice to that particular target audience. And it's a little more lighthearted, and I can find that very refreshing. But I think it really is very situational, and we still have to focus on crafting those relationships and finding out what each individual needs. And AI is just something that's there right now that can help us.
Mhm.
And if we can look at it with simplicity, I think that's definitely one piece of advice I would offer everyone,
Mhm.
as a blanket statement. If we can look at it with simplicity and not complicate it so much, then we can all start to have a better relationship with it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think that based on what I've seen and what you just articulated, looking at it with simplicity is key
Hmm.
because there's a lot of folks that want to make this a lot more complicated than it
Uh-huh.
actually is. Now, on the flip side, so that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum I see is folks that think it's just magic, right? And it's magic. It's going to do it. It's like that attorney that was in the
Hmm.
news a year ago who had his legal brief written by AI, and he's like, "Oh, I just thought it was a better search engine," and it made up all these cases, and he got in hot water with the court, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So I think that's a good example of that type of magical outlook on this technology as well.
Sure. I think that there is absolutely that opportunity there to just go with it
Mhm.
and say, yeah, this is magic, and people that are maybe less observant in the technological realm.
Mhm.
That's a scary thing.
Yeah.
That to me is almost scarier because you are relinquishing your power, whether it be to AI or even someone else. So
Yep.
I question who you are as a human being, as a person in business. What else are you relying on in your life
Mm.
and not taking responsibility for and accountability for? Where you to that point you're putting everything, all of your eggs into that basket to handle something for you. I think we all still really need to have that human piece of accountability. So I that's a pretty scary thing to me.
Yeah. I agree. And I'll take it a step further. I think we are going to see, as the levels of AI are developed and become more sophisticated, I do think we will see organizations that treat AI in not the same manner, but a similar manner to their human employees, with
Mhm.
regular reviews and KPIs and job descriptions for individual agents. It sounds a little silly when you say it right now, yet it's not a far reach, because you do want to have insight and visibility into what's going on, and you want to have the accountability, and you don't want to just trust and forget, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's already honestly happening.
Yeah.
We look so far for ways that we can streamline. And I think that, sometimes we go too far, especially in larger companies with more people, and there's so much more going on.
Hmm.
I think it can go too far. And I think that is absolutely one of those places. And, I spend a lot of time in the sector where it's still very manageable.
Hmm.
And so maybe in a larger company, it does make sense. And maybe things are more generalized, and that's corporate. And I think that's always been corporate and always will be corporate. So, and as technology evolves, we may be able to lean in a little bit more for sure. And I think that larger corporations will be the first ones to do that
Hmm.
and test those out. But there's a lot less at stake there, I think,
Yeah.
honestly. I think that small and medium-sized business owners have a lot more at stake. And you make one wrong move,
Yep.
and cancel culture will get you.
Right. Quite right. I think that you just surfaced something too, and maybe this will be our last main discussion point here today. And that's the issue of the middle market, small to medium sized businesses versus enterprise level organizations, and the
Right.
resources that are able to be deployed by both.
Mhm.
My personal belief here, and I always try to be very clear when I'm stating a personal opinion or belief. My personal opinion is that we are going to, within a very short period of time, find that smaller and medium-sized companies are actually going to be able to compete with some of their larger outsized competitors because of this technology in ways that they previously could not. I think it's going to
Mhm.
have a very field level playing or field playing level. Yeah, that would be the right
Level
phrase.
playing field.
Yes, level playing field. That's where I'm struggling to articulate the words. Maybe I need AI to write a script for me. A level playing field enhancer, if you will. And I'd
Mhm.
be interested in your thoughts on what you're seeing in the SMB space right now, and the remarks that I just made there, if you could parse that word salad.
Absolutely. So I think that you're absolutely right. I think there will be more of a level playing field
Yeah.
created for everyone in business. Now, where I think it's a bit different is once we evolve a little bit further down the road, there are going to the larger corporations and have currently started departments where they're creating their own AI,
Right.
and their resources are going to allow them to first hire the people to do it and also invest in technology that is maybe even not available at all to small and mid-sized businesses.
Right.
So I think that that very personalized creation of AI is going to be something that differentiates the small mid sectors to the enterprise level companies. Now, as far as marketing, advertising, and things like that right now, I think that's where the level playing field really is.
Hmm.
And that's obviously a huge part of the whole game. But And I don't like to refer to it as a game, honestly, but it truly is just, it's like throwing the spaghetti against the wall and seeing if it'll stick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the level playing field has been brought closer together for the level right now. But I do think as we get farther into the future, that's going to expand. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll be back at the point where there's this AI available mass market to small and mid-sized businesses, and then AI that's available to enterprise level businesses, specifically because they have the resources and ability to do it themselves. Now, what I think that then what will happen is we'll branch off there and you'll see a lot of enterprise businesses creating some of these capabilities and processes that will then create another market then that small businesses and mid-sized companies can access. And it'll actually become a little bit more of a full circle operation.
I couldn't agree more with everything you just articulated. There's a life cycle to a lot of technologies and to a lot of different business models. And I think we're just at the beginning of this life cycle right now. A standard example is when new technologies and new industries come on the scene, there are hundreds, if not thousands of players. Then they always go through a period of consolidation, and then there's always a refragmentation of that industry eventually. And I think there are analogs or analogies rather to what we're seeing in the AI space right now with that. So I think that was well said. Thank you, Nell.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I always try to, quote, land the plane on time. And we've been talking here for a good bit. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today. And as we wrap up, I'll just ask you one final question. What is one piece of advice that you would give to C-suite execs, SMB execs that want to leverage AI in their organizations? Maybe something that we didn't cover here today.
Absolutely. I think the first piece of advice I would give is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do it.
Right.
And I find, you are most successful when you are doing what you do best.
Mm-hmm.
Find a piece of AI that will help you succeed in another area that's necessary to what you're doing. But I think maybe what I'm really trying to say is hone in on your skills, stay in your lane, however you want to look at it, but let AI take some of the work off of your plate that really isn't for you or in your wheelhouse, and focus on your craft and your skill and leading the people and the front-facing work, and let it work for you. So overall, don't be afraid, but allow AI to take over some of those tasks so that you can hone in on what you do best.
Wonderful thoughts. For your listeners and our listeners that want to learn more about you, get in touch, figure out what you do a little bit deeper, what's the best way for them to find you?
Absolutely. I am all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, a little bit on LinkedIn. I need to be on LinkedIn more often. But also, my website is enticingmedia.com. That's enticingmedia.com. You can find my portfolio and everything else that we do on the website there as well.
Perfect. I see what you did there with the naming of the company. And I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't at least try to give a shout out to the one show that you have called What the Nell, right?
Oh, yes. Yes, that's my podcast.
Love it. So look for her on your streaming listening platform of choice, What the Nell.
Thank you. Yes,
You
What
bet.
the Nell.
All right. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning into AI for the C-Suite, where we are committed to helping middle market leaders thrive in the exponential age. If you found value in today's discussion, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on all the socials, including the dumpster fire that is Twitter, and visit our site, aifortheCsuite.com. Join us next time as we continue to unlock the potential of AI for your organization. And until then, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check.